Hey, I'm Adil, and welcome to the channel. Now, I've seen a lot of things come through the door in my time, but there's something special about old coins. They're little pieces of history you can hold in your hand. Canadian coins? They've got a story all their own. It all started back in 1858 when the province of Canada started minting its own currency, breaking away from the British system. Then, after the Dominion of Canada was formed in 1867, things really got official. They started making coins that looked a lot more like what you'd find in your pocket today. Well, almost. Over the last century and a half, the Royal Canadian Mint has produced billions of coins. Most are just worth their face value. But every once in a while, a mistake happens, a design gets changed, or a whole batch gets melted down, and you end up with something incredibly rare. These are the coins that collectors dream about. The ones that separate the enthusiasts from the serious investors. They're not just collector's items. They're historical artifacts that tell a unique story about a specific moment in time. What makes a coin valuable? It's all about rarity, condition, and demand. A tiny minting error, a forgotten batch, a political crisis. These are the ingredients for a numismatic legend. And Canada has some of the most legendary coins in the world. So forget what you think you know about Canadian money. Today, we're counting down the rarest and most valuable Canadian coins, some worth over $1 million. You're not going to believe what these things are worth. Stick around! Alright, let's start at the top. The undisputed king, the holy grail of Canadian numismatics. I'm talking about the 1911 silver dollar. Now, you might think, a silver dollar, what's the big deal? Well, here's the thing. Canada didn't officially issue a silver dollar for circulation until 1935. So, what is this coin? It's a pattern coin, a prototype. The government was considering introducing a dollar coin, and the mint in Ottawa struck a few examples to see what it would look like. It was a beautiful design, featuring King George V on the obverse. The story goes that only 3 of these were ever made. 2 were struck in silver, and 1 was struck in lead. For decades, they were the stuff of legend. 1 silver piece and the lead one ended up in a museum in Ottawa, the National Currency Collection. They were off the market, locked away for good. That left just 1 single silver 1911 dollar out there in the wild in private hands. You can imagine the kind of mystique that builds around an item like that. It's the ultimate prize for a Canadian coin collector. This coin is so famous it has a nickname, the Emperor of Canadian Coins. It's a fitting title. Every time the single privately owned specimen comes up for auction, it breaks records. It's a 7-figure coin, folks. We're talking about a piece of metal that has sold for over $1 million Canadian dollars. Think about that. A coin that was never meant to be spent, a trial piece that was almost forgotten, is now one of the most valuable coins on the entire planet. It represents a what-if moment in Canadian history. Why did they never make them? Politics mostly. The government of the day changed and the new administration shelved the idea of a dollar coin. They just didn't see the need for it. So the dies were put away and the project was scrapped. It's a classic story of government bureaucracy accidentally creating an incredible collectible. If they had gone ahead and minted millions of them, they'd be worth, well, the silver they're made of. But because they didn't, this coin became a legend. The one that's out there has an incredible pedigree. It's passed through the hands of some of the most famous collectors in history. Owning it is like owning a piece of the crown jewels of coin collecting. It's been professionally graded, of course. When you're dealing with an item of this value, authentication and grading are everything. You can't just take someone's word for it. It has to be slabbed and certified by a top-tier grading company, which this one is. The design itself is a work of art. The portrait of George V is stoic and regal, and the reverse has the classic Canadian coat of arms. It's larger and heavier than any other Canadian coin of its era. It just feels important when you see it. It's the kind of thing that, if it walked into my shop, the whole world would stop. You know you're looking at something that transcends the hobby and becomes a world-class treasure. So, the 1911 silver dollar sets the bar. It's a perfect storm of rarity, history, and beauty. With only 1 available to the public, its value is only going to go up. It's the dream coin, the one that everyone wants but almost no one can ever have. It truly is the Emperor, and it's earned its place at the very top of our list. A true masterpiece of numismatic history. If the 1911 dollar is the emperor, then the 1921 50-cent piece is the undisputed king of Canadian coins. This isn't a patent coin. This was meant for circulation. The mint produced over 200,000 of them. So you're probably thinking, Rick, if they made that many, how can it be rare? Well, that's where the story gets interesting. It's a classic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The 1920s started off with a low demand for 50-cent pieces. People just weren't using them, so the mint struck a batch in 1921, put them in the vaults, and they just sat there. And sat there. Year after year, the bags of shiny new 1921 50-cent coins collected dust, while the mint continued to use up the older stock from 1920. Nobody wanted new ones. It was a coin that nobody needed. Then, in 1929, the demand for 50-cent pieces finally started to pick up again. The mint master at the time, looking at his inventory, saw these huge stockpiles of coins from 1920 and 1921. He had a choice: release these old-date coins or mint new ones with the current date. He decided that releasing coins that were almost a decade old would confuse people and make them think counterfeit money was circulating. So, he made a fateful decision. He ordered nearly the entire mintage of both 1920 and 1921 50-cent pieces to be melted down. All 200,000 plus of the 1921 coins, gone, turned back into silver bullion to be recoined with a newer date. It was a practical decision at the time, but for collectors it was an act that created a legend. He saved the government a little bit of hassle, and in the process, created one of the rarest coins in Canadian history. You gotta love it. So how did any survive? A few must have gotten out. Maybe some were given to dignitaries, or a few bags were overlooked. Nobody knows for sure. What we do know is that today, experts estimate that only about 75 to 100 examples of the 1921 50-cent piece exist, from a mintage of over 200,000 to a surviving population of maybe 100. That is a staggering attrition rate. It's what makes this coin the stuff of dreams for collectors. Finding one is one thing, finding one in good condition is another. Most of the known examples are in pretty rough shape, what we call circulated condition. But every now and then, a high-grade, almost uncirculated one surfaces. When it does, the bidding goes through the roof. A top-quality example of the king of Canadian coins has sold for as much as $240,000 US. That's for a coin that was supposed to be worth $1. It's a beautiful coin, with the George V portrait on one side and the Canadian coat of arms on the other. But its value isn't in its design, it's in its story. It's the story of survival against all odds, a coin that was declared obsolete and ordered to be destroyed, yet a handful managed to escape the melting pot. That's what gets collectors excited. It's the ultimate survivor, a numismatic ghost that haunts the market. Following right behind the king is the Prince of Canadian Coins, the 1921 5-cent piece. And its story is almost identical, which is what makes that year, 1921, so legendary in Canadian numismatics. Just like its 50-cent brother, the mint produced a huge number of these small silver 5-cent coins, nearly 3 million of them in fact. And just like the 50-cent pieces, they sat in storage. There was simply no public demand for them. The coin itself was tiny, made of silver, what collectors call a fish scale. They were phasing these out. The government had already decided to switch to a larger, nickel 5-cent coin, the one we're more familiar with today. The new nickel coins were introduced in 1922. So what do you do when you have millions of old, obsolete silver coins sitting in your vault? You guessed it, you melt them down. The Great Melt of 1929 didn't just claim the 50-cent pieces. The vast majority of the 1921 silver 5-cent coins were also tossed into the furnace. Nearly the entire mintage was destroyed to recover the silver for other uses. Again, it was a purely economic and practical decision. Why keep millions of coins around that you're never going to issue? To the mint, it was just bullion. To future collectors, it was a tragedy that created an icon. Out of the nearly 3 million that were struck, it's estimated that only about 400 to 480 coins survived the melt. That's an even more incredible survival ratio than the 50-cent piece, though more exist in total numbers. The survival of these coins is a complete mystery. A few might have been sold to collectors at the time, or perhaps a few rolls escaped the recall. Whatever the reason, their scarcity was cemented. This coin is a real challenge for collectors. Because they're so small and were made of soft silver, the ones that did circulate got worn down very quickly. Finding one in any condition is tough. Finding one in a high grade, what we call mint state, is incredibly difficult. These are the examples that command the big money. We're talking deep into 5 figures, and for the absolute best examples, they can push into 6-figure territory. The value is all about the grade. A beat-up, worn example might still be worth a few $1,000s, which is amazing for a coin this small. But a pristine, uncirculated one with sharp details and original luster, that's when the price skyrockets. Collectors will pay a massive premium for quality because so few high-quality examples are known to exist. It's a classic supply and demand situation. So the 1921 5-cent piece earns its title as the Prince. It might not be as famous or as valuable as the king or the emperor, but it's a legendary rarity in its own right. It tells the same story of destruction and survival, a ghost of a coin that was never meant to be. If you ever find an old silver Canadian 5-cent piece, always check the date. You just never know if you're holding a little silver prince in your hands. Now we get to a coin born out of a major international crisis. I'm talking about the 1936 dime. This is a fascinating story. In late 1936, King Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson. This threw the entire British Empire, including Canada, into a constitutional pickle. They had all these coin dies with Edward's portrait on them, ready for 1937, but now they couldn't use them. He was no longer king. The problem was, they were running out of 1936 dated coins, especially the smaller denominations like the 1 cent, 10 cent, and 25-cent pieces. And the new dies for the incoming king, George VI, weren't ready yet. The Royal Canadian Mint was in a bind. They needed to produce more coins for 1937, but they couldn't use the old date or the wrong king's face. What do? Their solution was clever, and it created a major rarity. They decided to keep using the old 1936 dies with George V's portrait, but they added a tiny raised dot on the reverse, just below the date. This little dot was an identifier, a secret mark to show that these coins were actually struck in 1937, despite bearing the 1936 date. It was a temporary fix until the new George VI dies were ready to go. They produced a number of dot cents and dot quarters, which are rare and valuable in their own right. But the dot dime? That's the one that's almost mythical. The mint records show they prepared the dies for the 10-cent piece, but it seems they never went into full production. For decades, collectors believed that no 1936 dot dimes were ever actually struck or released. They were considered a phantom, something that might have been but wasn't. Then, in the 1940s, one turned up and then another. It turned out a very small number, likely just specimen or trial pieces, had been made and saved. To this day, only 5 1936 dot dimes are known to exist. 3 of them are in specimen condition, meaning they were specially struck for presentation purposes, and 2 were found in circulation, which is just incredible. Imagine finding one of those in your change. With only 5 known, you can bet this coin is incredibly valuable. It's a classic rarity. When one of the specimen examples comes up for auction, it's a major event in the coin world. One of them sold for an astonishing $184,000, all for a tiny little dot that most people would never even notice. That dot represents a specific turbulent moment in history, the abdication crisis. This is a perfect example of how a tiny detail can make a coin worth a fortune. A regular 1936 dime is a common coin, worth a few bucks for its silver content, but add that nearly invisible dot, and you're holding one of the greatest rarities in Canadian history. It's a subtle giant, a coin whose value is completely tied to its unique story and incredible scarcity. You always have to look for the small details. Let's talk about the 1948 silver dollar. This isn't a $1 million coin, but it's a key date that every serious Canadian collector needs to have. And it has a great story connected to another major world event. The coin features the iconic Voyageur design, showing a fur trader and an indigenous guide paddling a canoe. It's a classic Canadian image. The obverse, of course, has the king's portrait. The problem once again had to do with the king's title. In 1947, India gained its independence from the British Empire. This meant that King George VI was no longer the Emperor of India. His official title had to be changed, and that title, Eat Indai Imp, which stands for an emperor of India, was written in the legend around his portrait on all the coins. The mint had to create new dies with the Indi MP part removed. This process took time. The new master dies had to be made in London and then shipped over to Canada. The shipment was delayed, and the Royal Canadian Mint found itself in early 1948 with a demand for new silver dollars, but no updated dies to strike them with. They couldn't just keep using the 1947 dies because the date would be wrong. So, they faced a production halt. By the time the new 1948 dies finally arrived and were ready for production, most of the year had already passed. There wasn't much time left to strike coins. As a result, the mint only produced a very small number of silver dollars with the 1948 date. The official mintage for the 1948 silver dollar is just 18,780 coins. Compare that to the previous year, which saw over 1 million minted, or the following year with over 600,000. That tiny mintage number is what makes the 1948 dollar a huge rarity. It's the lowest mintage of any coin in the entire Voyager silver dollar series, which ran from 1935 to 1966. Every collector who tries to build a complete set of these dollars hits a major wall when they get to 1948. It's the gatekeeper of the series. Because of its low mintage and high demand from series collectors, the value has steadily climbed over the years. Even a well-worn, circulated example is worth hundreds of dollars. If you find one in uncirculated, mint-state condition, you're talking about thousands. And the very best, professionally graded examples can easily fetch into the low five figures. It's a blue-chip Canadian coin. The story of the 1948 silver dollar is a great lesson in how external events, in this case, the independence of a country on the other side of the world, can have a direct and dramatic impact on a coin's production, and ultimately, its rarity and value. It's a tangible link to a major moment in post-war world history, all captured on a single silver coin. So, we just talked about how the delayed 1948 dies created a rarity. But what did the mint do in the meantime? At the beginning of 1948, when they still needed coins but didn't have the new dies? This is where another famous Canadian variety comes from, the 1947 maple leaf issues. It's directly connected to the same story of Indian independence. The mint had a demand for all denominations of coins, not just silver dollars. So to keep production going while they waited for the new dies without the IND-IMP title, they came up with another clever stopgap solution. They took the old 1947 dies and kept using them into 1948. But to distinguish these coins from the ones actually struck in 1947, they added a tiny little maple leaf next to the date. This little maple leaf is everything. It signifies that although the coin says 1947, it was actually produced in 1948. This was done for the 1 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent quarter and 50 cent pieces, as well as the silver dollar. All of these maple leaf varieties are scarcer than their regular 1947 counterparts, and they are highly sought after by collectors. The 1947 maple leaf silver dollar is particularly tough. While it has a higher mintage than the 1948 dollar we just discussed, finding one in high-grade, uncirculated condition is extremely difficult. Most of these coins went directly into circulation and saw heavy use. An uncirculated example is a true prize and can be worth well into the thousands of dollars, with the absolute finest examples pushing 5 figures. The same goes for the smaller denominations. The 1947 maple leaf 50-cent piece is a major key date. The dime and quarter are also tough. Even the little 1-cent coin with the maple leaf is a significant find. Many collectors try to assemble a full set of all the 1947 maple leaf denominations, which is a real challenge. It's a mini collection within the larger Canadian series. What I love about these coins is that, like the 1936 dot, the value is all in a tiny added detail. A regular 1947 coin is common, but that little leaf, no bigger than a pinhead, changes everything. It turns a common coin into a rare one. It's a reminder to always look closely at your change. You need to know what you're looking for, because the difference between $1 and $1,000 can be incredibly small. So, the 1947 Maple Leaf series stands as a testament to the mint's ingenuity in a difficult situation. It's a beautiful and tangible link to a pivotal moment in the history of the British Commonwealth. a tiny maple leaf that tells a huge story about the changing world of the late 1940s, and a coin that every serious collector wants to get their hands on. Let's jump forward a couple of decades to 1969. This rarity isn't about melting or politics. It's a classic mint era, the kind of mistake that gets collectors' hearts racing. I'm talking about the 1969 large date dime. To understand why it's rare, you first have to know what the normal coin looks like. In 1969, almost every single dime produced by the Royal Canadian Mint was a small date variety. The difference is in the shape and size of the number 9 in the date 1969. On the common small date variety, the top loop of the 9 is more of a closed circle, and the number is smaller overall. On the super rare large date variety, the 9 is visibly larger, and its top loop is more open, like a letter P that's been slightly squashed. It's a subtle difference, but once you see them side by side, it's unmistakable. So what happened? It seems that an older obverse die from 1968 was accidentally paired with a 1969 reverse die for a very short production run. This combination created the large date appearance. It was a mistake, a mule error, that was caught very quickly. The Mint realized their error, pulled the die from service, and went back to the standard small date production. But in that short time, a few of the error coins escaped. And when I say a few, I mean a few. The exact number is unknown, but the consensus among experts is that only about 10 to 20 genuine examples of the 1969 large date dime exist. Some people even think the number is lower, maybe as few as 5 to 8. This makes it one of the greatest Canadian rarities of the modern era. It's a ghost that people have been hunting for over 50 years. Because it's a modern coin made of nickel, its value has nothing to do with its metal content. It's 100% based on its incredible rarity and the demand from collectors who specialize in error coins and die varieties. Finding one of these is like winning the lottery. People have spent years, even decades, searching through bags and rolls of old dimes, hoping to spot that distinctive large 9. When one of these does come up for sale, which is very, very rarely, it commands a huge price. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars for a single dime. For a coin that was made within the lifetime of many people watching this video, that's just incredible. It shows that rare coins aren't just from the 19th or early 20th century. Major rarities can be created at any time. This coin is a lesson in paying attention. It's the ultimate needle in a haystack. Millions upon millions of 1969 dimes were minted, and hiding among them is a handful of these mega rarities. It's why you always check your change, and it's why having a good eye for detail is the most important tool a coin collector can have. The 1969 large date dime is a modern legend. For our last coin, we're talking about gold, solid gold, specifically the 1916 C gold sovereign. Now, the sovereign is a famous British gold coin minted for centuries. But what many people don't know is that for a short time, from 1908 to 1919, the Royal Mint operated a branch in Ottawa, Canada. And one of the coins they produced was the classic British gold sovereign, but with a small C mint mark for Canada. These Ottawa minted sovereigns are collectible in their own right, a fascinating chapter in Canadian history, where the mint was producing another country's currency. Most dates are relatively common, but the 1916 C is special. It has the lowest mintage of any sovereign produced at the Ottawa Mint, with just over 6,000 coins struck. That alone makes it a key date. But the story gets better. The First World War was raging in 1916, and gold was a crucial strategic asset. Most of these 1916 C sovereigns were not for circulation in Canada. They were shipped overseas, likely to the United States, to pay for war supplies. They were treated as bullion, as blocks of gold, not as individual coins. As a result, many were stored in bags, jostled around on ships, and handled roughly. This means that while 6,000 were made, finding one in pristine high-grade condition is exceptionally difficult. Most examples that survived are what we call bag-marked, covered in little nicks and scratches from hitting other coins. They are still valuable because of the low mintage, but a truly clean, lustrous, uncirculated example is the ultimate prize for collectors of this series. When a top-tier, gem-quality 1916 C sovereign comes to market, the bidding is fierce. Collectors from Canada, the UK, and around the world want it. It's an intersection of multiple collecting fields. One of the finest known examples, graded by a professional service as MS66, that's Gem Mint State, sold at auction for an incredible $156,000. That's for a coin a little bigger than a dime. The value is in the grade. A circulated, beat-up example might be worth a few $1,000s, still a lot more than its basic gold value. But as you climb the grading scale from AU to MS62 to MS64, the price multiplies with each step. That MS66 coin is in a class all by itself. It represents a miracle of survival, a coin that somehow avoided the rough and tumble fate of its siblings. The 1916 Sea Sovereign is a beautiful coin with the classic design of St. George slaying the dragon on the reverse and King George V on the obverse. But it's that tiny sea mint mark above the date that makes it Canadian, and its history and condition rarity that make it a legend. It's a piece of wartime history, a piece of British history, and one of the most sought-after treasures in all of Canadian numismatics. So there you have it. From million-dollar patterns to dimes with tiny dots, Canada's rarest coins are a fascinating look into history, politics, and the occasional lucky mistake. Each one tells a story of scarcity and survival. It's a reminder that value isn't just about gold or silver content, it's about the story and how many are left for collectors to find. The emperor, the king, the prince, these aren't just coins, they're numismatic royalty, and their legends will only grow over time. Before you start digging through your grandpa's old coin jar, remember this: grade, certification, and variety are everything in coin collecting. Always check auction records and get your coins certified. A professional grading service is the only way to be sure of what you have and what it's truly worth. A small difference in condition can mean a massive difference in price, so expert authentication is non-negotiable when you're dealing with potentially valuable pieces. Don't get caught buying a fake or overpaying for a damaged coin. These coins are out there, and new discoveries are still being made. You never know what might be hiding in an old collection or even in circulation. That's what makes this hobby so exciting, the thrill of the hunt. Which rare Canadian coin surprised you most? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more amazing coin stories. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.